Good morning and welcome everyone who's joined us for this session. My name is Tomiwa Aladekomo. I'm the CEO at Big Cabal, which is the parent company for TechCabal and Zikoko. With us today is Elo Umeh. He's the CEO and founder of Terragon Group. Elo's worked in mobile and digital media in Africa for over 15 years across a range of different countries. Before he started Terragon, he consulted for the World Bank and IFC on the development of rural telephony initiatives, mobile payments, and new product development. Since he started Terragon Group, the business has grown to serve multinational and local brands, offices in Lagos, Nairobi, Accra, Joburg, and a research and development team in Bangalore, India. That's part of what we're going to talk about today. Elo is passionate about leveraging the unique ways Africans can use mobile devices to build, to connect brands to their customers, about using our data in more intelligent ways, driving value out of it. He has a global executive MBA from IESE Business School, and it's fantastic to have you here, Elo. Welcome.
Thank you, Tomiwa. Thanks for the kind words. Thanks to Big Cabal, thanks to TechCabal for having me. Looking forward to learning from the engagement. I'm looking forward to listening, to learn from the audience as well. Yeah, thanks very much.
Excellent. So Elo, I think it's useful to give people a bit of background about Terragon. You know, what is it you guys set out to do when you started? What was the mission? And how's the journey been so far?
Yes, absolutely. It seems like we've been doing this for a very long time. But it's not been that long because we've been having a ton of fun. We've been around for, this is our 12th year. And we set out to essentially develop and grow the African digital media ecosystem. And the objective being, and what's digital media in Africa? Digital media in Africa is harnessing the power of mobile technology to connect companies to their customers. So digital media, first of all, is the foundation. Then things like digital transformation is built on digital media. So digital transformation, which some of the audience will know about, stuff that, like the banks have changed, the color of the banks have changed, how they talk to customers have changed. That is digital transformation. So there are companies that have existed to nurture, grow, and make digital, to build out the digital platform in Africa. I am proud to say that Terragon has been one of those companies. And how have we done that? Terragon launched in 2012, thanks to my co-founders, Deji Balogun and Odunto Dubanjo. We launched the mobile ad network. That mobile ad network used to be called Twimpine. Many of us should have heard about Twimpine. So for the longest time, Terragon was in the background, but Terragon owned Twimpine. And at the heart of it, we took several companies online as Twimpine. We built websites for companies at no cost, mobile sites, and we took them to mobile app. The first set of companies that went into mobile app, we launched mobile monetization in this continent. And that is really the digital media ecosystem, because that is what aggregated users online. That's what helped the user experience to consume content online. We made that experience better. And without that, the culture and the education around mobile wouldn't be where it is today, before people start to download apps and people started to the habit of browsing online. Of course, there are many other factors, but in terms of the economics of it and the value chain, we built it out. We enabled it, and that has always been our North Star, to essentially enable companies connect to their customers, and we've continued to do that. What has really changed and where we are today, we call ourselves a data analytics and mobile marketing cloud business. Why? Because at the time we launched 12 years ago, most of the phones were feature phones, and they were migrating to becoming smartphones. Now that there's predominantly a lot of smartphones, data becomes the key asset, and that data is essentially to enable intelligent connections. So we're building out the cloud infrastructure to help companies harness the power of data to connect to their customers. So the mission remains the same. The focus 12 years ago remains the same, but how we're going about it has been changing. So the business is has continued to trudge on with the times. So that is the Terragon business.
Fantastic. And so in sort of adjusting to the times, what's that meant from a growth perspective for the business, and how have you strategically sort of decided, you know what, this is the space where the most opportunity is next, from especially for people who are starting out on a journey. So we have founders in the audience, we have people who are in early stage in their businesses. How do you decide sort of, this is where the market's going, this is where the opportunity is? What's that process look like for Terragon?
Well, so I think that there are a couple of things. It will be very easy to say, oh, there is 1 million people here, and that is the market I want to cater to. That is a back of the envelope way of going about it. But this is pure. This is more strategy. I think the market size is very, very important. So the market size. I am a firm believer in looking for the biggest opportunity and going after that opportunity, going after the biggest thing. So what is the market opportunity? I think that is super important. And what does that mean in clear terms? In Nigeria, there are over 150 million mobile connections. Digital media in Nigeria is digital media or a super app, for instance. In Asia, there have been super apps that have tried. A super app in the hands of 10 million Nigerians will build a significantly valuable business. Somebody should solve that problem. It's a massive opportunity. That is one of the things that we look at. What is the size of the opportunity? The second one is competitive advantage and competitive positioning. I have a lot of respect for competition, right? But I hate competitors. And that helps me refine the competitive advantage, the competitive landscape. In Terragon, I say this all the time. I think competition is the best thing that can happen. And that's why capitalism fosters innovation. That's why capitalism pushes societies forward. But on the other hand, myself, my team, and the closest people that have worked with me for a long time, we absolutely hate competition, but we respect, competitors.
You're a student of Peter Steele.
I think that is the way to think about it, and it helps you refine competitive advantage. Because if the market opportunity is big enough, there are several big opportunities, right? You look at delivery. There's tons of players in delivery today, and if players have come in and players have left, players are deepening that space, searching for that competitive advantage, because that is where you find sustainable market position. Right?
Searching for your competitive advantage, you're looking for the space where you can shine, where competitors aren't focused, and where you can deliver something unique.
I think that's the most important thing, where you can deliver something unique.
Gotcha. Interesting. And then tell me about delivering that. And so evolving from mobile ad network to aggregating data to serving companies, what's the journey of delivering that, the set of skills and services that you need to, and this is going to lead us into some conversations about some of the deals you've done, some of the expansion that you've done as a business. But talk to me about that journey, because building mobile websites is one skill set, serving ads is one skill set, aggregating data and, being able to do predictive or mining sort of consumer data so that banks or FMCGs can make intelligent decisions. It's a completely different set of skills. So how did Terragon go from, building websites and serving ads to what it is that you are today from an execution perspective?
So first of all, it's vision, being able to, and that's to the previous question around how do we know where things are going. So we look at, and that's entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurs have this innate thing of figuring out that this is where the market will go to. I don't know if there is a science to it, or I think it's more out of an art. My co-founder talks about me being an artist. And I think that most entrepreneurs are kind of like typically that way. And it is really, this is where the market is going to. If the market is going to this in this direction, what do I need to get there? And as far as this technology, the core of it is people. How do we reskill? How do we retool the business? How do we reskill the business to take us from point A of building mobile websites, serving ads online, and moving to the direction of enterprise software, aggregating data, and essentially enabling measurement and attribution online? Totally different business. So we need to be able to move that vision, and to move that vision, reskilling, retooling, and moving to the other end. At the core of it is people.
Gotcha. But I mean, so beyond people though, and I'm as much as possible, I want this conversation to be, I mean, rooted in your actual experiences. So, you know, like Twin Pine, I don't do. Are you still running Twin Pine? You know, as a percentage of the business, is it still there, or shrunk to nothing?
The stack, the programmatic stack, is still there because it feeds data into our enterprise software for clients. But we don't go to market as Twin Pine anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. All right. So talk to me about sort of building capacity. So like, yeah, you've got people, but you know, in 2012, you know, this is what we're doing. In 2015, you know, do we decide we need more developers, and do we go hunting for them? Where do we go hunting from there? You know, how did you go from, you know, sitting in Lagos, starting in Lagos, to a company that's pretty well spread out? So you guys are in India, you're all over the continent, you're all over Nigeria. So how did that expansion happen? You know, what was that journey?
So first of all, we went out to India in 2013, 2014. I had never been. We were leasing the technology for our ad network, Twin Pine. And it got to a point where we needed to customize that technology. The technology we were leasing was a European technology. So we needed to customize it. To customize it, we needed to build for Africa, for the unique needs of Africans. And we're learning on the fly, right? And I flew down to India. I visited 5 cities, trying to find a partner that we could work with. And what I was looking for was an alignment of vision. There's the supply side, especially in 2013, the supply side of companies that were building ad networks and ad servers at the time was a dime a dozen. And we found the last city I visited was Bangalore, and we met a founder who studied at one of the IITs, had a fairly strong team, small but strong team, and our visions aligned. Before that, I was in Hyderabad, I was in Ahmedabad, I was in Delhi and Gurgaon, and all the other people we found, several companies, meetings all week, we didn't find that alignment of vision, right? And in Bangalore, we found it. And we were able to do a deal where we co-developed the technology, and we essentially decided that we were going to build a technology that was relevant south of the equator. So size of the opportunity, back to vision, first of all, alignment of vision. Build a technology that solves a very big problem. And we resolved to build a technology that solves for the south of the equator. So the south of the equator goes from Honduras, Bolivia, down to Indonesia, with Africa and Latin America in between all that, right? Or Brazil and co. And that was our catchment. And that became the mission. And we went ahead to start driving that vision. We did a deal with them. We shared IP. We focused our IP. We focused the intellectual property ownership for Terragon at the time to Africa. And while our partner company were taking care of Asia, we didn't have a plan for Latin America as yet, considering that the market opportunity was south of the equator. And that was our first foray. And this is back to the point. If the vision is aligned, the market opportunity is big enough, so the dream becomes very big. So that as you fail, that dream keeps you going, right? Because it's a very, very long journey.
Really interesting. And then talk about Ife. So you guys have a campus on, you guys have gone looking for talent there, have quite deep relationships. What triggered that? Talent is one of those areas that we're constantly talking about in the industry. So what drove that relationship? What drove that journey?
So for IFE was around the same time. We shut down our IFE hub last year, full disclosure, but we were in IFE for 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
And a couple of reasons, right? We went to IFE, when we went out to IFE, we were making this transition to data analytics. And we needed graduates or undergraduates who were exceptional in the physical sciences, so computer science, physics, some engineering, who could help us with data mining, training algorithms, and essentially solving some of the more not so technical problems. We went out to IFE, we grew that team to about 20 people, thanks to one of our lead engineers, Segun Adetimehin, who led that effort. For us, IFE helped us learn and scale our learning effort. But as we matured as a business, the sort of problem we were able to solve in IFE was no longer relevant. At the time we went to set up a hub in IFE, there was nobody else, right? We did it successfully. We worked with Airtel, we worked with Main1 to bring fiber in there. It was for us, it was an absolutely incredible experience. But as the problems became bigger, and which is market maturity, the supply side of talent from IFE in that hub couldn't keep up with the sort of challenges we were trying to solve for. So we had to make the hard decision to say, let's slow down on the hub approach and try and be more global, which is let's double down on India, where there's stronger experience. So it's really back to the question of junior engineers versus intermediate and senior engineers. We need a stronger supply of intermediate and senior engineers. And that was our journey. But it goes back to the question of solving for people.
Let me ask a more abstract question. I mean, based on those two experiences, building a talent pool in IFE versus dealing with the talent in India, and thinking a bit more abstract and philosophically about Nigeria's talent problem and our development path. What does it take to get an IFE to a place where they're able to compete with Bangalore from a talent perspective, from a company's perspective? Because obviously India has made a huge killing on a global basis by being, a supply of talent, a major supplier of talent. And that's a journey that Nigeria theoretically is on. We know that there are people here. We know our people have the capacity. It's just, what does the journey look like for us to get to that level of sophistication?
Tomiwa, I think it's, the answer is Hydra-headed. I can't just say.
No, you know what? And I don't expect that. You're not our minister of, talent acquisition for the country. Yeah.
I think the quality within the school system needs to improve significantly. Okay. Something we take for granted is that India churns out exceptional engineering talent.
Okay.
From their India Institutes of Technology, and there are several of them across the country.
Gotcha.
The standards within those schools are fairly exceptional. When you think about somebody like the CEO of Microsoft, he didn't attend an IIT. He went to one of the lesser universities in India, but he's gone up to become CEO of Microsoft, right? At our India hub, we have some IIT graduates. They are exceptional guys. In Nigeria, for instance, you have people who, within the quality of interactions they have in the university system, it's not the university system fostering this, but the quality of interaction, the peer-to-peer interactions they have, they become stellar software engineers. So these people are also, so how do we set up clubs, deliberate clubs within the university system? This is outside of the country, of the government, or outside of the curriculum. This is things that we do not, these are things that are within the control of entrepreneurs. This is like an idea. So you go into universities, there are people who are studying physical sciences, engineering, who can become fantastic data scientists, fantastic data engineers. It goes back to the thing Bio Adekomo is doing with Data Science Nigeria. How do we set up those clubs within different university clusters? And those guys have a ripple effect on the ecosystem. And these things, if somebody is a part of a club for 4 or 5 years while in university, this thing can come out, have a degree in physics or have a degree in computer engineering, and come out and start competing globally to solve some of the most difficult problems. At the heart of it, technology is back to the point of the quality of interactions you can foster within an ecosystem. And that ecosystem can be as large as Nigeria, it can be Lagos, it can be Ife. Bangalore is a thriving ecosystem. Hyderabad is a thriving ecosystem, not because people come from school ready-made. It's because you go there and you have people who are coming out of IBM, who are coming out, and IBM has 10,000 people there, right? You have people coming out of Google, and Google has 10,000 people there. You have people coming out of Microsoft, and Microsoft, that is happening in a city, right? So in what we are trying to do with Yaba, I don't know where the Yaba dream is now, but that is the sort of thing we're talking about. It is ecosystems that make things happen. San Francisco is what it is because of the forays of Intel, then before Apple, before all the other guys. That's what led to Silicon Valley, El Camino Real, all that stuff that happened, venture capital, and all. It's an ecosystem. So that's why I said it's hydra-headed. I started with education, and I'm trying to end with entrepreneurship with capital.
It's interesting. Earlier this week, and there's been a couple of Yaba events this week. I went to Unicorn Capital, launched their campus in Yaba. I think one of the things that was interesting is they had, and I'm going to get this, chancellors, I think vice chancellors, both from IFE and from Unilag at that event. And I think that does speak to the need of, if you're going to think about like how to build these ecosystems and build them well, you're going to need to have a tighter relationship between education and entrepreneurs in terms of a feedback loop of what is required to make each of these work. And actually speaking to your India experience and your thoughts about like 10,000, like 10,000 people from IBM, 10,000 people from Google. I'm reading, there's a book I'm reading very slowly, The Golden Tap, The Rise of Hyper-Funded Indian Startups. And I don't know if you've read that. Super interesting.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
It's worth a read. I mean, it talks about some of these clubs and how, like a whole bunch of the people that ended up working at Google in its early days, that ended up working at Yahoo in its early days, like were people who came from like student clubs at Indian universities, basically. And somebody started, like a tech festival, an annual tech kind of festival event, and everybody will come and show their stuff. But almost that's one of the things that kind of kick-started sort of like the tech revolution in India. Definitely an interesting sort of set of perspectives to consider. Anyway, one of the things, sorry, I've taken us on a bit of a journey.
No, I think it's interesting. I think ecosystems are, first of all, it is not a fluke that we're getting exciting businesses out of Nigeria that grow from a small seed to an Iroko tree. We know all the examples. These are engineering. These are engineering outcomes. So let's not take it away from the ecosystem. There's progress. There is some traction, but everything happens within. It happens within the market. So Nigeria as itself, as a country as well, needs to also improve in certain areas. So but the ecosystem is trying.
Again, and so Victor Asemota put out a tweet yesterday about talent and founders being more likely to burn out because they've had to replace their entire team multiple times. So this talent conversation is one that actually, it's interesting. And when we talk about the development of the ecosystem, I guess, and again, your experiences are quite useful to take into account here. We're doing well. We're building well-funded companies, and there's a lot of funding coming into the market right now. We can tell that, especially on the fintech space, people are excited about what's happening in there. There's a mad scramble for talent. And it's engineering talent, but it's design talent. It's across board, and people are sort of like desperately hunting for talent. I mean, what's the next stage if the ecosystem is going to grow? Like, what's missing, or what's the next big like exploder of this ecosystem from your perspective? Like, if you could add one more thing to the Nigerian tech ecosystem tomorrow that you think would be a major catalyst for movement, what would it be?
Well, so first of all, my thoughts around this is currently is evolving. I don't have a position right now. I would have said the society at large, Nigeria, needs to work better. But sincerely speaking, work is no longer a place. That's the truth. And if work is no longer a place, people can work from anywhere. So the society goes down several notches. That's criteria of the society. And what do I mean by society working? People need to think less about basic amenities, water, power. You know, things just need to be. There needs to be better levelers, right? So I can be in Oka, for instance, and I'm working for Flutterwave. And I don't need to be in Lagos, right? That is because in Oka, my internet is fantastic. I can walk into a ShopRite, I can play my PlayStation, I can do everything I want in Oka. And if they need me, I can get in the car and come to Lagos for 6 hours, right? But the truth about it is that there are tons of people who work in San Francisco, California, who live in Napa Valley, who live in San Diego.
Yep. I mean, I guess the thing I worry about with that is, I mean, that's not about the tech industry. That's about Nigeria. I mean, we've built this tech industry basically in spite of Nigeria, to be honest. It's like, it's the Nigeria factor. But so I sometimes wonder, you know, and as somebody who's deeply committed to look, how do we fix Nigeria at a fundamental level? You know, it's like, that's a big thing. But when you fix that, you know, then, you know, like even the energy industry will work better, you know, like manufacturing will work better, like everything will work better. That one is not, it's not just about us and our little ecosystem in here. But I guess, I mean, that's a fundamental truth that people need to sort of embrace, is the country's got to work. I guess we've strayed into some very interesting areas, but a bit far away from where we started this conversation. So let's come back to acquiring companies. I want to talk about sort of like this deal in terms of actually your acquisition path. So talk about the first time you guys looked to acquire a company, what you hoped to acquire to happen, and what actually happened.
Well, the first time we tried to acquire a company was in 2016.
Okay.
And it was more a market entry acquisition. So it was more of asset acquisition and less of an entire company type acquisition. There are several ways to acquire stuff, right? You can acquire, which is more what we did with India. You can try to acquire assets of a company, but not the entire company. And then you can try to acquire a business and its P&L and balance sheet and everything. All three we have done.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will talk about the 2016, which was our first move to acquire, which went through actually. We acquired Alcatel-Lucent mobile advertising assets across 16 Francophone African markets. We acquired it from our partner who we were leasing technology from from France. The first technology we used to launch Twin Pine, we're leasing from them. In their journey, they acquired Alcatel-Lucent mobile advertising assets in several telcos. Most of those telcos were around. Another telco was Globe, Nigeria. That was our first foray into data management platforms. At the time, we hadn't built our own data management platform. So we needed something that gave us scale. You know, when I was talking about market, I was talking about the size of the opportunity. We went ahead and acquired these assets, and we started to talk to the Orange team that were managing these assets, which was out of Jordan.
Okay.
And then, and from that team, we started to, we were trying to switch out the Alcatel box to replace with our data management platform in Orange, Botswana, in Glo, Nigeria, and also in one other Orange market. But that is not so important. This was in 2016. We did that into 2017. We started running out of cash because we had built our data management platform. As part of building our data management platform, we're trying to reach scale of deployment so that we could raise a Series A.
Okay.
Right? And that's part of why we did the deal. So when we started on the journey to raise the Series A and we started to build our business plan, we realized that all these 16 markets put together gave us about 60 million profiles. And that if we focused on Nigeria, and at the same time, we did the Nigeria deal. The Nigeria deal with MTN Nigeria gave us access to 60 million profiles. 16 markets gave us access to 60 million profiles as well. So we're like, why stretch ourselves too thin, harnessing, going into 16 markets when we had one market in Nigeria, which we could double down on, deepen, and try and win, right? But we had already done that deal. But of course, from a strategic perspective, it was a great deal because it gave us access into several markets. But from a timing perspective, we didn't have the capital to deepen that, right? And also, we didn't also have the team, commercial team, and the maturity of the business. Today, if we did that deal today, we could have been in a better place.
Gotcha.
Why? Because we have somebody who is very well versed, takes care of our global partnerships based out of London, who is very well versed and has the capacity to deal with several markets. We have country leads in different markets. At that time, we didn't have all this, and we have stronger people. So from a team perspective, from a timing perspective, it wasn't the right call.
Let me pause you.
Yeah.
You guys went out. Here's this ambitious plan. We're going to acquire all these assets, and we're going to build out a business in all of these countries. And how long after? 12 months after you've done the deal, 18 months after you've done the deal, you realize basically you don't have the cash, you don't have the manpower to actually execute on the assets that you've acquired. What happened there? Like, where did that end up? Like, what did you do with those assets in the end? How did that play out?
Eventually, you're absolutely correct. Your anecdote is spot on. So eventually, we had to make a tough call. In 18 months, we raised money. So that the part of money, we raised our Series A. That solved the money problem.
Okay.
But the second part is, timing-wise, we needed to win a market. We needed to focus and have a product and we needed to make a call. Are we going to focus on 16 markets or focus on 3 markets?
Interesting.
And this is strategy. And it's like going to war. Are you going to have 16 fronts or are you going to have 3 fronts? The chance of you winning the war if you have 3 fronts is much stronger. And we made a decision that we would cut our losses on the acquisition, and we paid cash for that acquisition. And moved on while we focused on 3 fronts.
So lessons learned. If you were to go back, before you made that acquisition, I mean, did you have the knowledge to understand how it would play out, and you ignored warning signals? Was it a bold bet that just failed the way sometimes your bold bets fail in business? But what lessons would you say you picked up from that particular experience?
I think the biggest thing is a strategy question. That was more, I think the strategy was defective from the get-go. So things around business model, the Porter's 5 forces, our value chain economics, what choices and what are the consequences of our choices. Those are things that before you go into something, before you go into that push, we need to think about it. We need to refine that. So it's strategy. Strategy needs to be very clear. The second part is timing. And Porter's 5 forces strategy part, it goes back into things like people. The business, you can have a vision, you can have all that stuff, but where's the business and where's the team at that time, at that stage, to go ahead and do things like that. So strategy then timing, those are things that we need to refine. And I think that timing plays, I think within our ecosystem, in the tech space, and maybe in general in the market, timing plays a big role in success or failure of an opportunity. Sometimes you could do something and you could launch a product. The product is great, but it's just a question of when did you launch it? And you come back 2 years after you launch the same product and it's an outsized success. So how do you set up the pillars? How do you set up the pillars to make sure, how do you test out the pillars in the market to make sure that the timing is right? So we went and English-speaking country bought 16 Francophone assets. English-speaking Nigerian company that had a tech team that was Indian went to buy a Francophone, 16 market Francophone operation.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are things, those are things we need to be
more cautious about. Okay.
Absolutely.
The next deal, after that one.
The next deal was we tried for a couple of years to acquire our Indian partners, BiZense.
Okay.
We started that in the middle of after the Orange acquisition. And why did we do that? We did that more from an IP perspective. Like the first point I made was we are solving a problem that is south of the equator. And that problem that is south of the equator is still relevant today, right? From Mexico down to Indonesia, right? And we shared IP. We also had built a very strong working relationship over 5 years. The culture of both businesses were very similar. When we looked at the checklist of 10 things that could make a great deal, we passed probably 8 of them.
Okay.
And we said to ourselves, we started talking to ourselves, and we said, I spoke to my co-founder, Amit, who is the founder of BiZense. I told him, Amit, there's a deal to be done here. And he thought, yeah, there's probably a deal to be done. And we went back and forth for a few months, I think close to 18 months. It came to a head or to a conclusion as soon as we raised our Series A. And raising Series A, I don't know if it had a direct influence on doing the deal. I think it had a role to play. Why? Because we now had institutional capital. We were now on a journey to pursuing this large market opportunity. The jury is still out on how we have done, but that was more to acquire talent to deepen our intellectual property. And it was less of a financial or market. We don't have a commercial operation in India.
Yeah.
We have a base, an R&D hub in India, and we have very, very good colleagues who support us with what we do.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of like that deal. 18 months, what was the delay? Lack of confidence? Did they want to stay solo? Like, what were their concerns? What kept you guys talking for 18 months?
I think it's like boyfriend and girlfriend.
Convinced that you're a capable provider.
I think that is a very good analogy to explain.
Interesting.
You go out, you see a fine girl, she says, this guy is nice, and you have to tell her that you love her. Beyond telling her, you have to show her that you love her.
I love it.
And you will go through its ups and downs. You will fight sometimes, and if you make up again, and you make up and you start again. Not even start again, you just continue on the journey, right? And at the point, you'll be like, this guy, you really mean what you say. Okay, maybe I will agree to marry you. And that is really it. It's not, I don't think there's anything, it's not more, it's not less than that.
I think your point about the Series A is quite interesting. One of the things that we debate a lot at TechCabal is what's the value of funding announcements, and we do a ton of them. But it is interesting how much of a signal boost they are for other investors, for your employees, for your potential partners. It is that kind of like, okay, this guy says he can't provide, but now we know he can. Now we actually we have public evidence that he's capable of doing it.
I don't think it's just your partners, and I think the market. Yeah, it's a market signal that we are not just working with Elo, or we're not just working with Deji, or we're not just working with whoever is in the business, right? Or we're not just working with Amit. We are working with more than that. We're working now with a vehicle that has institutional backing. And institutional backing is deep.
Okay.
There's a reason why institutions are institutions, you know? So I think it's encouraging, but that's a totally different topic, talking about fundraise. I think, first of all, I believe that it's not about where you get money from. I think it's about who you get money from as well.
Okay, we're going to talk about institutional backing in a second, because I actually think that's a very interesting place to go. But again, just sort of like in the lead up to the deal. Okay, so your toasting period is over. Their game, we're going to do this deal. How are you preparing both companies for this acquisition? You know, are people on your side worried they're about to lose? You know, they're about to lose their jobs because you've just bought this company. You know, what are you telling them? How do you manage? You said you guys were a pretty good culture fit. What were your cultures like? And then how do you manage integrating that culture fit, that culture?
Yeah, so so first of all, we had been working for 5 years. We were separate companies. It was quite easy to come together. And this is, maybe that 5 years was we were friends. Then that 18 months was we were becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. Then post that is. So when we were friends, we knew that maybe that 18-month period is a strong possibility. And then we consummated it via the acquisition. But culture, right? I would give a lot of credit to my co-founder and CTO, Deji, who was visiting India every other month, spending a month or so on the ground. And after each of those trips, he comes back. We don't even have a formal meeting. We just talk about what the experience was like, how are things going. Guys from the Lagos team go to India, spend a month, co-developing, because this is an India team. India is not very different from Nigeria. Like I say to people, India is a Nigeria that works. So it's not really, and we have our guys out of Nigeria go to India, spend a month, 2 months, product managers who, you know, essentially they are co-developing stuff, and that's our engineering hub. So there was already, if people come back and they start complaining that this was terrible, my chip was bad, this person was terrible. No, it was always pleasant experiences. And it was pleasant because there was the culture, the ways of working was similar. Laid back, free, responsible, very creative, focused on problems and solving those problems, and the size of the problems, not courage, not being afraid of pursuing very big things. You know, and when we look at these elements, we were like, there's a deal to be done here. There was no doubt, in fact, I have to say, that we couldn't work together. There was absolutely no doubt. It was now the conviction to come together. That was what we needed to work on.
It sounds like, I mean, what would you say was the biggest challenge in finalizing the deal? Like, was there anything that was a big specific challenge that sticks out to you, or that you'd advise somebody to watch out for?
I think every company's journeys are different. So what was a big deal for us, or what was a sticky point for us, could be like easy peasy for another company. For us, it was more, I think it was more around essentially the conviction to go, are we better together or we're better separate? That was the main thing.
Fair enough.
Which I think will come up in many deals, really.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk institutional backing. So you guys raised your Series A. I think it was Telcom. I'm not sure who else participated in that deal. Let's talk a little bit about that. Actually, so a big lesson, I guess I should pull out some of the lessons. So you guys were partners for 5 years. So you're doing an acquisition where you already understand the people you're acquiring. You already have, you know, a working relationship from a culture perspective. You guys know you're a fit. And even with that, it still took over 18 months to do the deal. So even when you're buying somebody that you're a fit with, you have a relationship with, there's still a dating period. There's still a making sure that the value is there. The value exchange works all the way through. So I think this is probably the biggest lessons I take from what it is that you've just told us about that deal. But your Series A happened in the same period. I mean, I know You guys raised $5 million in that raise. I think you were doing about 5M in revenue around that time as well. So, I mean, you guys, you weren't hurting for cash, for revenue, but you had ambitions. And so I guess talk to us about raising a Series A, how did the conversation start? Why did you end up there? Did you talk to 20 different VCs, or did you talk to, how did that, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so first of all, at the time we raised our Series A, we had been in business for 8 years.
Okay.
So we were not the typical startup per se.
Yeah.
We were on a mission, like I said earlier, to help companies connect to their customers on mobile. Mobile was going through tremendous change at the time. Smartphones were scaling.
Okay.
Where people were picking up smartphones for the very first time. We knew that smartphones would become the computers in Africa. Africa never had computers at scale. We were very clear that it was going to be smartphones. We knew that at the back of smartphones was going to be, because smartphones really is an aggregation of several apps, right? And those apps are user interfaces that are used to communicate with large organizations. That's really at the core of it. And how do you communicate? Communication is emission of data back and forth between A to P or P to P, right? So we thought about that and we said at the core of what we're doing is going to be data. And we think that data management will evolve. We didn't have the tactical map of how it was going to evolve. So if data management was going to evolve, we needed to think about 700 or close to 800 today million mobile phones, where about 50% of them are going to be smartphones. So you're going to be able to, you have a market opportunity to manage close to 400 million data management processes for mobile devices. So that is market sizing and the market opportunity. This is deep tech for us. This is deep tech in Africa. While we were talking to investors for our Series A, the reality is in 2015, in September 2015, I remember the exact date, Terragon reached out to us via email.
Okay.
We had not started raising. And they said, oh, we are raising a fund in Africa, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, great. And I told them, oh, we can connect over a call. On that call, I told them, we don't need any money. We have a lot of money. And we're building a data management platform because we want to evolve the business. I was like, okay. So they were like, cool, let's stay in touch. And they stayed in touch. Every 6 months, they reach out again and they ask us, so how are things going? We told them, oh, we are part of Stanford Seed. We're doing the Stanford Seed, blah, 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 blah. And we don't need money. No, not yet. We did the Orange deal. And we had a whole bunch of markets to execute on. We looked at our business plan and we needed money all of a sudden. So maybe our team wasn't good enough. So our projections weren't so great, right? Or maybe the market opportunity was so much and as we went along, we were figuring it out, right? There's several theories of how things went. So we started an active process in 2017 with Terragon, which consummated in 2018 with a Series A raise of 5 million. On the back of that, and what was thesis? Thesis was what I just talked about in terms of market opportunity around data and how companies would evolve. How companies would evolve and how people would interact with companies or with brands. So we are in the middle of that. We are at the back of it, enabling those interactions. One thing that has been challenging with investors is, I think in Africa there's a thesis for what an African business should look like. Okay. I'm talking to investors both in Series A and Series B. Now we're raising our Series B. One thing that has come out and is very clear is, I think investors in general look at African businesses as companies that should be solving a type of problem, which is they should be using technology to disrupt a physical space. So it's not really pure, they shouldn't be doing deep tech, but they should be doing more, essentially what you see, right? So for instance, fintech, there's a fintech play that is mobile, that is agent banking. That is relevant, right? So folks understand that. Or you're disrupting lending and offering there's a physical element, and there's also a little bit of a tech element. But for a company like Terragon that has, from launch, built an ad network, which is pure software, and today we're doing enterprise software, pure software, and we're doing data analytics, essentially understanding the binary elements of data and gleaning insights from it. That is not like an typical African play. So that, for me, I think the ecosystem, and as the ecosystem matures, I think companies need to, and when you think about multiples, right? You look at data analytics companies, you look at the multiples, that's where the real money is. Right?
That's where real money is. Pure tech. Real money is. Like, I mean, nobody wants everybody wants bits, no one wants atoms in the West. Like, let it be pure software.
You know, so when you look at pure software, you look at multiples, and you look at solving big problems. You know, I think the ecosystem needs to be challenged, right? To get on board solving some of these problems. It's going to be very difficult, and that's why we have done India deals. We are going into markets. One of the acquisitions we try to go into South Africa by buying the South African entity to shorten our path to market. And South Africa has been historically a very challenging market to get into. You know, and we didn't get through with that one. So these are
fascinating. Very, very interesting. And I mean, so you said, I mean, the problem with investors is that they have a sense of what, you know, African sort of tech looks like. I mean, and you find that with a company like Telkom as well, which is pretty grounded on the continent, you know. That's still a challenge? Is that still something you need to push to them, or do they have a better understanding just being seated here entirely?
No, I think that Telkom, we were probably their second deal.
Okay.
I think the first deal was, I don't remember the first deal, but I think we were second. We were supposed to be the first, but I think we became the second in their current fund. But I wouldn't say that they don't understand. I think Telkom backs entrepreneurs, and they know how to manage, they know how to build a relationship with entrepreneurs. I give them that. So they are real venture guys, right? So they give you the room to make mistakes. They put you on the right trajectory to help you fix those mistakes as you go along. And, you know, I think they've been, for us, they've been great investors. That said, I also think that there's a reality. If investors have a thesis of this is what African tech should look like, they're making an assessment of the available talent versus the type of opportunity that talent is solving. Or they're making an assessment of the type of companies, the size of the companies, and if they will buy deep tech. Those are the things, those are the assessments they're making. So one is team, the second one is market, and the third one may be probably timing. The ecosystem is still young. Let it solve some, you know, maybe more relevant problems before they move on to other things, right? Before they move on to the deeper things. But it also takes entrepreneurship to nullify those assumptions. It takes a team that has courage and ambition to also nullify those assumptions. And for when I look at where we are from 2018 to now, we are on the path to nullifying those assumptions. Because at the end of the day, it's an assumption. It's not steeped in science.
Yeah.
Right? So it is an assumption. So it's somebody that will come out one day and say, this assumption is nonsense. And you build a big company, fantastic company, and everybody starts to go, oh, this is where the deal is.
Gotcha. Fantastic. All right. I've got some questions coming in from the audience. So let me jump into some of those because we are also running tight on time. And this ties into the conversation we're having. In raising a Series A, what are the top 5 things investors and financial institutions look for? And this is from Paul Onose. So yeah, what are the most important things at Series A level?
It's going to sound cliche, but these are the most important things. Number one, size of the market. The first thing. What are you solving for? And how big can it be? I think the first thing is the size of the market. The second one is, where does your competitive advantage sit? And are you in a position to deepen that competitive advantage? I think super, super important. That would be the second one. The third one would be, timing. Where are you where's the market? So you're solving a problem, that problem may be relevant, but is it the time to solve that problem? So timing, super important. The third one will be, if timing is right, if your competitive advantage is strong, if the market is big enough, you have scale. Can this thing scale? So scale will be, in Africa, is super important. So is relevant in Nigeria, pan-Nigeria, is relevant in Kenya, is relevant in Ghana, is relevant in Cote d'Ivoire, can it scale? That becomes a very important factor. And then if those things are correct, the team, who are the guys you have with you? And team is also quite important, because as you go through the journey, the team that got you here is not the team that will take you there. So that is something that also evolves. So very, very important. Team is also important. And then the last one will be, if I'm putting money in this, how can my money come out? If the entrepreneur has an idea of what that looks like and aligns with the investors on what an exit would look like, it could also be very powerful. So those will be 5 or 6 things that I would say are key to raising a successful round, or successful Series A.
Elo, that was a textbook answer. Like, you gave 6, not 5, very, very thoughtfully put together. Like, yeah, I start charging people for these sessions, because that was like, that was an MBA answer.
We paid for MBA, so we learned something.
You learned some things there. IASC will not say you didn't learn anything. Okay. This is pulls us back a little bit further from Ikedi Jacobs. He wants to know, how do you build your initial team as a startup? What do you and who do you look for? So let's start there.
This is fun. This is fascinating. And I think I learned this from my co-founder. And when we were learning it, we didn't really figure that it was that way. So there was something that I didn't pay attention to when we were hiring the first team of people that put together our aggregation business and our mobile ad network business. And that was a habit of getting things done, of having gotten things done. Everybody on the team were fresh out of school. Some of them today are in Seattle with Microsoft. Some of them are in San Francisco with Facebook. Some of them are with Google. They've gone on to do many things. But these individuals were people who had done something in university. And when you have experiences, you now kind of like define those experiences into terms. So what we look for is, we try to look for people who can be a fit for the type of company we're trying to build, one, so they solve for culture. The second thing is curious people, right? And curious people are people who see a problem and ask questions as to why that problem is that way, and they try to solve the problem. Those are curious people. That's why we were testing for people who have done something in university. One of the people we hired used to have a magazine in university, for instance. The magazine, you didn't need to have done 100,000 copies or 10,000 copies. He just needed to have a magazine and was trying. First of all, to publish a magazine in university, isn't that something? So with that curiosity. The second part is, how do they make sure that they go from 1 copy of the magazine and to 10 copies of the magazine? That is another way. And there's something in that. That is taking a step, courage, right? There's something about courage. You are afraid. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of what people will think. You're afraid of all sorts of things. But you're trudging on. You're trying your best. So those are things we solve for. We solve for culture on the one hand, and we also solve for curiosity. There may be other elements. But those would be key things that I would advise.
Okay. All right. Ikedi had a second question, but it's not super clear. It's somewhere around providing value and making money. How do you reconcile providing value and making money as a startup built by young school leavers? So Ikedi, I don't know if you want to come on audio and ask and clarify that question. I've allowed you to speak if you want to if you want to clarify that question. If not, I will jump on to another.
I think his hands are raised.
All right, Katie.
Hello.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon. It's a privilege to be on this meeting. So the question that I'm asking is that, as young school leavers that are starting into business, you see, most of us, we are broke the first time, so we are trying to like provide value, and we are also trying to like make money. So how do you do that? I want to think that you had the same challenge when you were starting up your business in the first place. So that's the question I'm trying to ask. Thank you.
Was that question clear to you, Elo? Because I'm not sure it's quite.
No, it is. It's a question of choice.
Yeah.
It's a question of choice. So they want to make money. And I think money in Nigeria is now. Money has to come just immediately.
For today, not tomorrow.
Yeah, it's for today. So that's the first part of the question. Second part of the question is value. In a society that is shortcut driven, how do you, and there's a trade-off. If you do the shortcut part, you may not make money, and if you make money, you may need to do some cut shots, right? Ikedia, my sincere answer to that is you need to choose. It needs to be one. You need to choose one. I think that customers need to continue to come back, and it's at the velocity of customers. So if you have one customer and it's coming back all the time, that's where you make money, and that is where you get value. So that you have to give that time. We're on a call today. We're talking about things that have happened in 12 years. 12 years is if a child was born in 2009, that child will be 12 years old today. That child is becoming a teenager, right? So it takes time for companies to trust you, for individuals to trust you. And if they trust you, you have several paths to create value. And if you have several paths to create value for one customer and multiple customers, the velocity, the amount of money and revenues you can make grows. So businesses are built long-term. When you start, you need to pay attention to first of all, making that customer happy and getting that customer to tell other people to come and work with you. Then you grow over time. That's why investors, when they invest money, venture investors, they invest in 7-year cycles, 10-year cycles. They know that it takes time.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that's good. And I hope that answered your question. Ayogebi's got an interesting one. He's like, would you call the relationship with the Indian company a merger or an acquisition? What makes either of these unique? Yeah, so basically, what's the difference? And, what's the importance of that difference?
Yeah, I think M&A is going back to business school, right? In strategy, M&A is a subject which they teach together, mergers and acquisitions. I think it's nomenclature. What do you want to call it? We announced it as an acquisition. Why? Because there was some cash element to it, and there was also some stock element to it, and that is to build alignment, right? And then, so that for us, we called it an acquisition. Could we have called it a merger? Yes, maybe, because there was some stock element to it. So, and there are other indices to call it a merger as well. But in this case, their commercial trajectory as an entity ended. So it wasn't really, they're not exploiting opportunities commercially. Terragon exploits all opportunities. So I think that what qualifies it as an acquisition and not a merger per se. So and how do you tell the difference between the two? I don't know technically how to. I think it's on a case-by-case basis, and it depends. In fact, this is a negotiating whatever. You may want to acquire a company, you do an acquisition, and it's announced as a merger.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
those are at play. So
yeah, there are several things. You know, there are several things. There are several elements to it, and I do believe that my co-founders in India are people who have great ambition with a strong sense of commercial and ambitious goals, right? A strong sense of commercial outlook and very ambitious goals. When we say an opportunity is south of the equator, and we talk about, you know, Africa as a continent being a test bed for that sort of opportunity, and they come forward to say, guys, we can do this, and they make the steps, they take the steps. That is absolutely fascinating because it takes a lot to be able to come together with, in spite of we've worked for 5 years, but to come together and do that and trust us and come on that journey with us, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Okay, interesting. I mean, yeah, it's a good answer and it's a good sort of perspectives on that. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, I've got a question from Harry Mascot, and it's interesting. We've got an interesting audience today. I think a mix of very young people and a bit more experienced people. I can see some CEO type questions here. I can see some starting out questions. But Henry Mascot has a question about how do you think about Pan-African business development, local partnership teams, or a Pan-African team?
I think that my thinking around this has evolved somewhat. And this is because I think companies are important. So Terragon as a company is important. Big Cabal is important. Those are all, they are vehicles that organize the factors of production. That is what a company is. Okay. However, in a market, there are ways of working in every market. And there are ecosystems, there are networks of relationships in every market. So I have gone from having a local hand to having a mix with a local hand being the front of it, because that local hand can leverage and understand the networks of relationships within the market. So I would have a balance of having a local driver of the business in the market. So for instance, in Kenya, there's a way of getting things done in Kenya. There's a network of relationships within Kenya. Okay. You know, and it's only a local that can navigate those networks of relationship, because that comes to that person intuitively. Those are the things that's the way of working. That's the culture, right? So for instance, you're building out an e-commerce play. I don't think you build out a successful e-commerce play without getting into in Nigeria, without getting into the trading networks in Nigeria. It's only somebody who is local within the Nigeria ecosystem that understands how value is created within that trading networks to be able to put electronic commerce on top of it. So if you go and get somebody from London to come and build e-commerce in Nigeria, the person is to be likely very, very clueless. Yeah. You know, so, however, there's the element as well of to build out that, to leverage a collaboration, the local knowledge, and also somebody who understands the vision, who understands the core of the business, who understands how it has been done before, who understands the technology, to collaborate with that local person to bring it all together. Okay, fantastic. Just as an FYI, Bolu is going to launch a poll right now for the people in the audience. If you can get your answers, just take a moment to answer, please. It'd be valuable for us. There's a couple of related questions that take us back to early days Terragon. Harold Mike wants to know, what was the first product Terragon took to market and how successful was it? What was the first product we took to market? We took mobile sites for publishers to market. That was the first question. Those were the first products as part of our Twin Pine play, mobile advertising play. At the time when we launched Twin Pine, nobody had mobile sites. Guardian, Punch, everybody were all on desktops. Remember that this was when we had 5% smartphone penetration. Everybody still had feature phones. When we went to them at the time, but of this 5% that had feature phones, of the feature phones, they had internet access, right?
Yeah.
But they were all going to a website. So the user experience was terrible.
Yeah.
So we took most of these companies to mobile. That was the first product. Was it successful? Yes, it was an outsized success.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think that kind of answers the second question, because Ayoge B asked, how long did it take Terragon after starts to break even, or at least begin to see desired response from the market? And how did you keep your team motivated during that time? So I guess if it was an outside success, then motivating them wasn't that hard.
I think that it's human nature to, first of all, I think hope is part of human nature. So hope springs eternal, right? The second part of it is people like to be associated with success. And we've gone through both the highs and we've also gone through the lows. And in the lows, sometimes it can be really, really low. But at the end of the day, when it's low, you think about when it was high. And it's in those moments you know that, what are the things that got you to that high? It's about believing in people, trusting people.
Let me extend this. I mean, talk to me about keeping the team together, keeping the team motivated during the lows. Like, do you start to see exoduses of people, or are you giving motivational speeches every week? Like, what's that felt like for you when things get tough and the path isn't as clear?
So first of all, I'm not like I tell people that have worked with me, I stay very far away from bullshit.
Okay.
So I tend not to. I don't give what I don't have. And bullshit is giving what you really don't have, per se. And so you need to be honest every time, especially to the people that are part of the business. And that honesty is what, sometimes it doesn't work for some people. But some people, they appreciate it. And I also find that the honesty, when it doesn't even work in the moment, it works subsequently.
Gotcha.
And so if they don't buy the honesty at that time, they leave or they do whatever they want to do, they come back and they respect the fact that this guy was honest. Like I used the example of when you hire somebody and you tell the person this is what you're supposed to work on, and this is what we expect from you in the next period of time. The honesty of hiring the person and agreeing a compensation is the same honesty that is required when telling the person that it's going well and it's also not going well.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So yeah, that is the way I feel. I have a lot of ideas, not a lot, but I have some ideas around this. But let me not take too much of our time.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'll find you for a beer and we'll talk about those. Okay, I have two questions about your SA deal. So the first one is, can you speak a bit to what did not work with the SA deal and your 3 most important lessons as a CEO?
That is a very interesting question. 3 most important lessons of this. Okay, I will start with the SA deal. What didn't work? I think in doing deals, before you go into the deal, you need to make sure you are being considered, or you're not just there to make up the numbers or to bump up the price. I think with the SA deal, I think our role was more for them to bump up the numbers. That's what I think. So I think that didn't quite work. So this deal was last year, actually.
Okay.
So it was in the middle of COVID. And there are ways to mitigate that. One of the ways to mitigate that is to work with, to build a chemistry with the team of the company you're trying to acquire. When you work to build that chemistry, you find that alignment of vision, direction, purpose. Then the things around, the other things solve automatically for themselves. So you find out that when you start to build a relationship, you can figure out if you're there as making up the numbers or not. But in the circumstances, we couldn't achieve those things. So it's not like we were not aware, but we were trying to solve for it because it was COVID. We were trying to use the market was very virtual. So we made trips into South Africa trying to assess the deal, but that didn't quite work out. I think we were part of the guys who were making up the numbers.
Gotcha. So there's somebody else has a question. I'm going to murder this person's name. I think it's Nive Nlabati. Sorry, I apologize. It's horrible. So wants to know, have you abandoned launch in South Africa? You know, what were the challenges? Is it still likely to happen?
No, we went into South Africa in January this year. So the acquisition didn't happen. We hired a fairly senior country manager and we launched South Africa. We're in commercial discussions with a number of large companies in South Africa now. And we should have in early H2, we should have our first set of customers on the demand side. On the supply side, we have a number of partners already. So South Africa is going fairly well. And we are very happy with our traction, doing it organically. We wanted to solve for the challenges of the mature market by going via inorganic paths, acquisition being one of them. But we've gone organically, and we'll continue to keep our ears open for acquisitive opportunities that may come up. And then the second, there's another question of 3 lessons of an entrepreneur, but maybe I can leave that to later.
Okay. Okay. So actually, we were going to leave this question alone, but 2 or 3 people have asked it. You know, Harold Mike wants to know, can you give young entrepreneurs a little insight into Terragon's working culture for team building and bonding? And then somebody has said they want to know about those answers about sort of team motivation. They want those answers as well. So I guess let's talk culture and team building and team bonding.
Well, so team building and team, I think it's evolving. And the way Terragon was in the first 8 years before we raised Series A is very different from the way Terragon is today after 3 years post Series A and additional fundraising as well. I think that in our first 8 years, we were a very fun organization of very young people, where we kind of deferred, maybe not deferred, but we kind of erred on the side of a lot of work, deep work, and a ton of fun. We didn't pay a lot of attention to responsibility, accountability. Maybe there was a little bit of freedom. And as we went further into solving market, one of the things about opportunity of entrepreneurship is the size of the opportunity. As you go further, you raise external capital, the clock starts to tick. So we needed to tighten accountability and responsibility a bit more, which there's nothing wrong with that. Some of the most successful companies this is what they thrive on. We've gone from a company that had loose KPIs, as we called it at the time, to a company that has very, very strict OKR culture. And this kind of like affects, so we've evolved from that company that had a lot of fun while doing very interesting things to a company that is still doing very interesting things, but the most important thing is results. And I'm proud of the evolution because in all of this, the company is maturing. So it is now a question of what do I want? And I think that there's a role for everybody. We would really like people who know how to have fun and also people who like to work very hard while having fun. And people who are obsessed with results. That for us is the melting pot of our culture. Tons of, and we talk about it as dynamic people who are agile, who depend on others, teamwork, and are autonomous. They are open to change.
Gotcha.
And that is how we codify people who we like in Terragon.
Let me ask a post-COVID question. Are you guys remote or are you back in office fully? What are you like at the moment?
It's unlikely we're going to come back to the office fully.
Okay.
Not as unlikely. We have announced to the team that we will be physical and remote. We keep our office space and people come in once, twice a month. The senior people come in more, but even the senior folks don't come in every day. So it's going to be that way going forward.
Have you had challenges with that? How do you keep the team cohesive, motivated? I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting, I'll say, like from my experience, is teams been very productive, remote, but definitely a little bit less cohesive, a little bit less like tight. Have you found anything similar, or has it been a different experience for you?
So one of the things that drives innovation and companies like at our stage is the quality of interactions between individuals, that culture, and that's why culture is very important in technology businesses. So we are still trying to figure it out. We think in some areas it has gone up in terms of productivity, while in some areas it's not so great. So we are still trying to figure out what the right mix should be. What sort of virtual interactions can we foster, and what sort of physical interactions can we foster to sustain the right level of productivity. I'm happy to learn from other companies who have figured it out, but for us, we are still on that journey to figuring out the right balance.
Okay, all right. I think that's useful. There's a couple of people that want to connect with you. Henry Mascot has an acquisition in mind in the midterm, and you've answered some of his questions, but he wants to reach you, down the line afterwards. I guess I'm
on LinkedIn as Elo Umeh, at Elo Umeh, and we can connect.
LinkedIn, people, hit him up on LinkedIn. So I think that answers a couple. What's interesting here? So there's still a bunch of questions. We're not going to get through all of these. What is, there's very, very specific questions. I guess, yeah, so two very narrow questions and narrow interests. Well, let's try them out. Let's see. Assuming you've worked with lawyers for acquisitions and other strategic moves, what are 3 things you think are important in choosing a lawyer or legal team, especially in Nigeria? Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, when it ends.
I think for lawyers, the first thing I'd solve for is trust. Do I trust the lawyer? And does the lawyer have the capacity to do the deal? That's really, those are the 2 key things that I solve for. And you have to trust the lawyer, right? But if the lawyer doesn't have the capacity, then you should look for somebody else. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I think I might need to pull this to a close. We've just got 5 more minutes and I do have some wrapping up. I think this has been a really, really interesting session. Super practical, very MBA in places. So you guys are getting free strategy experience. But thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Elo, for coming and sharing your experience.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Somebody asked in the chat if we do these sessions regularly. We do. We did one last week on cybersecurity. That was really interesting. There's one on June 11th, which I think is next week. Please sign up on our website for the TechCabal newsletter for each of these. Next week is on creating content. Fisayo Foshudo is coming on. That should be interesting. In the early days, this would have been very close to Elo's wheelhouse. They moved away from some of this.
No. Content is still
part of it. Yeah. We have a TechCabal Insights unit. They produce our events. They also provide data, research, and actionable intelligence reports. So if you are interested, go to techcabal.com/TC Insights. You can request a report. You can download some of the free reports we do have there on a range of things from fintech to health tech. Some of them are for purchase as well. And if you're not already subscribed to TC Daily, I do not understand why, but you should definitely go and subscribe. It's a great recap of what's happening in the technology space every morning. It's very entertaining and very informative. So please do that. And the link is on there on site if you want to do that. Thank you all very much. We really appreciate you joining us for these sessions. Thank you, Elo, again, and look forward to getting a beer and talking more about team dynamics and the like. And look forward to hearing about that Series B and announcing it when you guys close. But thanks, good luck. Looking forward to all the great things Terragon will do. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tomiwa. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Cheers.
Cheers. Take care.